Jake Bailey, welcome to my podcast.
Fantastic to be here, Dom. Thanks for having me, eh?
Well, it's great to connect. You just popped a vocal zone 8 seconds before we started.
Yeah. No, these are good. I do a lot of talking, and you sort of sit these in the side of your mouth, and it means you can do a lot of talking. So that's that's what that's for.
Hey, it's great to have you here. You've got a brand new book out called The Comeback Code: The Power of Resilience When the Going Gets Tough. Long time between drinks.
Yeah, it has been.
10 years. Yeah. You're doing a book. Is this your thing now? A book every 10 years?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't get through very many if it was, I don't think. I mean, the book has been, it's definitely been a lot of years in the making. And I guess, in a sense, it sort of had to be. It's kind of the product of the last 9 years of learning and study and the opportunity that I've had to, I guess, work with and learn from people all around the globe and from different walks of life about how we get through tough times. It's been a long time in the making, and it's really satisfying to sort of have it out there now into the world. Your
resilience is like a big buzzword now, isn't it?
100%. Undoubtedly.
Massive. And in your book, you talk about the 4 model S.
4S model, yep.
The what?
4S model.
Yeah, of constructing resilience. So what's that?
So the 4S model is basically the way that I have come to teach and explain around resilience. It's effectively 4 things which we know from, I guess, studies and research and psychology are just proven to make people better at getting through tough times. And so I guess, resilience, the way to view and think about resilience is that it is just like any other skill. It's something which you can learn and develop and improve upon through practice, but particularly if you sort of practice around specific skills that we know work. So the 4S's are, I guess, 4 of these key pillars of what go towards creating resilience and making people good at getting through tough times, sort of framed up and packaged in a way which hopefully people can understand and relate to, which they can retain and then which they can go on to, I guess, utilize and actually put into practice in life. Because I think often when it comes to learning about these things, when it comes to learning about these kind of, really grandiose concepts, a lot of the time they're not particularly tangible. The 4S's is hopefully a way to get it across and communicate it to people in a way which they can, actually get use out of in life.
So S number 1, slow down.
Yes, first S, slowing down. And I guess at its core, the idea of slowing down is basically to take a problem or a challenge or a piece of adversity and to try and break it down into a series of smaller, more manageable, bite-sized pieces. We find that people who have this ability to, I guess, face things on their own terms, whether that's getting through a month at a time, a week at a time, a day at a time, an hour at a time, they do considerably better at getting through those tough times than people who, I guess, take things on as one big lump sum, one big challenge. Because I'm sure you would have experienced this many times in life. When something bad happens, when you're going through a really tough time, there is this sense of overwhelm, right? It's how am I going to get through this, this day or this week or even this next hour? And hopefully the answer for you has been, I'm just going to focus on getting through to the next milestone. And even, you were talking about running just before off air, and that's something which I'm sure you do with running as well. It's definitely something which I do with my running, is that when you go into a race or you go into a long run or a training block or whatever it may be, you just focus on getting through to the next aid station, or focus on getting through the next kilometre instead of trying to take on this big, massive thing as one whole, because it's a hell of a lot harder to get through it when you frame it in that way, which makes it appear so much bigger and more massive and I guess insurmountable than if you take it piece by piece. Yeah,
unmanageable. That's the only way to do it. It's like that joke, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and actually, it's sort of, I talk in the book, there's, about 1 million different really, really bad metaphors that psychologists have put to this, and it's eating an elephant, one bite at a time, or a masterful painting is made up of 1 million individual small strokes, sort of thing. Like if you have a look online, there's a whole bunch of metaphors and similes which have been put to this, most of which are really, really cheesy. But at its core, we know that people who have this ability to just face things on their own terms, they just do better at getting through tough times. Yeah. I think for most people, they can understand and relate to, I guess, why that would be.
I love this because tough times are to be expected. Life's a fucking shit show.
100%, absolutely. And in psychology we call that inevitable adversity, right? It's this idea that tough times and adversity and hardship can't be avoided. It's not something which you can sort of outwit or outsmart through, luck or being a good person or always doing the right thing, or it's not something which you can avoid. Tough times are just an inevitable, unavoidable part of life, and suffering and things being pretty shit sometimes is just how it goes. That's not a bad thing, but if we can equip ourselves with the skills and tools to get through it more effectively and overcome it more efficiently, we basically set ourselves up to have a more enjoyable, more successful, better life as a result of that.
Yeah. So, and S number 2, salvage.
Yeah, salvaging. Salvaging is basically your ability to look for silver linings, your ability to find the good during tough times, your ability to find the positive in negatives, your ability to deliberately look for and seek out what could be possibly good about a bad situation. And in psychology, this has got sort of a fancier name. We talk about this idea of realistic optimism, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's your ability to be, realistic about a situation, which often is to say, this is actually shit, and in spite of that, to deliberately choose to be optimistic anyway, to actually continue to seek for and look for the good within that situation. And again, I don't really like to keep sort of bringing it back to the fact that this is all around research and evidence, because it's kind of, people throw, studies and research and evidence around all of the time. But I think that it is important to note that, we have proof that this works and proof that people who have this ability to, continue to look for the good during tough times are the people who fare best in life. If you can go into a bad situation and you can continue to look for and seek out what about that could be positive or good, you tend to come out the other side of it better off. And it's worth noting, I think, a couple of things. One, that's actually a conscious, deliberate decision a lot of the time. And two, to make that decision, you have to sort of go into life with the sense that not everything is black and white, not everything is binary. Not all good situations are good through and through, not all bad situations are bad through and through, that there is sort of shades of grey in between where there can be silver linings.
Yeah.
And, for me and throughout my story, that's kind of been a really defining part of that. I think that, humour is a great example of that. A lot of people are really good at laughing their way through tough times. And really, at its core, that's just an example of salvaging. Your ability to find something to laugh at during tough times is a really practical, tangible example of how you can, take some good from the bad.
Yeah, and we'll get into your whole backstory and what makes you qualified to speak about this shortly. But yeah, S number 3, streamline.
Yeah, streamlining. I guess streamlining comes down to how we engage and manage our anxieties and worries, particularly during times of adversity and challenge. And there's sort of two different parts to this. First of all, we know that for particularly young people who are going through really rapid periods of brain development and growth, or what we talk about as neurocognitive development, we know that if they spend a lot of time, mismanaging their worries, if they spend a lot of time anxious or concerned about things, they can actually physiologically change the way that their brain grows and develops to basically set themselves up to be good at worrying for the rest of their life at the cost of their ability to solution find or problem solve. And I think the easiest way to explain this or to think about this is when you're young, you become really good at whatever you spend a lot of time doing, right? If you spend a lot of time kicking a rugby ball, you become pretty good at that. If you spend a lot of time practicing a language or an instrument or whatever it may be, you pick these things up really well when you are young because your brain's still relatively sort of plastic and malleable and adaptable and developing. But we also know, likewise, if you spend a lot of time worrying, you become really, really good at worrying, and often to the detriment of your ability to solution find or problem solve. So when it comes to our young people, it's really important that we encourage them to find ways to, manage or control their anxieties and worries during that period of life. But I think it's something which is more relevant and broadly applicable than just to our young people. I don't know about for you, but for me, when I've gone through tough times in my life before, there's a real tendency to kind of pick up all of the problems at once or pick up all of the worries at once. It's really easy to sort of languish under the tap of bad things when something's going wrong and to frame and view everything through this lens that there is no good. And, a good friend of mine, Dr. Lucy Hone, who some of your listeners will be familiar with as well, she's, an international expert in this field around the psychology of resilience. And to sort of steal her framing, the way that she talks about this point is around, is what I'm doing helping or harming? At its core, streamlining is about ensuring that particularly during tough times, particularly during periods of adversity and challenge, that we are not making things harder on ourselves than they need to be.
Yeah, actually, a therapist said the same thing to me. Ask yourself that: is this helpful or is it harming? And then another one is this even factual?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, 100%.
Or is it just something that your brain has made up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a really natural human tendency, like I say. There's a story which I tell about this one, which I think kind of it paints it in a bit of a manner, and it's something which we can possibly sort of delve into, we can delve into the story a little bit later on. But when it comes to my cancer journey and experience, which sort of set me on this path, during that time of going through treatment, I lost my hair, my eyebrows, my eyelashes. And as an 18-year-old guy, that was it was actually, and it feels ridiculous to look back on it now, but that was actually a really significant thing. You're being an 18-year-old guy, you're insecure or self-conscious or insecure, as I certainly was, as I presume most of us are at that time of life. And for me, I actually vividly remember that it impacted the way that I guess interacted with the adversity in terms of my cancer in a really negative way. And I guess I stopped doing things like going out in public or taking time hospital leave when I had the opportunity to, even going outside to go to the park, because I was concerned and worried about the way that other people, I guess, viewed me, and the fact that I attracted attention. It was very sympathetic, of course, but it was a factor which was present. I came to realise very quickly that worrying about, I guess, how I looked and this insecurity which I had around that was not only not going towards achieving the outcome which I wanted, which was, getting through the cancer and getting better, but in fact it was actively working against that outcome. I wasn't getting out and getting fresh air. I wasn't spending time with friends. I wasn't sort of having some freedom from the hospital. So I guess, I tell that story because hopefully it paints or illustrates a picture of what this means. Streamlining is about trying to ensure that during tough times, when we've already got limited, I guess, attention and effort and resources, that we're putting them towards things which actually matter and go towards achieving the outcome which we're trying to reach, not sort of squandering them on other things which are, I guess, tangentially related and not that important.
Yeah. So the 4S model, so slow down, salvage, streamline, and the fourth and final one, stand alongside.
Yeah. So standing alongside is, I guess, relatively self-explanatory. The story which I tell to sort of frame this one, though, was a few years ago I had the privilege of working with the United States Forest Service, which is basically the US government's version of DOC, Department of Conservation, do similar stuff to DOC. But they're tough. A big part of their job is just to, survive out in the wilderness, either by themselves or with one other person for prolonged periods of time. So I presented to their team. Afterwards, one of the guys came up to me, and what he said to me was, in the United States Forest Service, we have two rules to ensure we don't die out there in the bush. The first one is we don't go out unprepared, and the second rule is we don't climb mountains alone. And what he said to me was, I think you'll find this relates to, I guess, resilience and to getting through life just as much as it relates to surviving in the bush. And I really thought about that, and I guess on that first point, having some not going out unprepared, that's really what, my work is around, hopefully equipping people with some skills and tools and strategies to face life's challenges. On that second point, though, far more interestingly, not climbing mountains alone, I guess if you take that as a pretty kind of cheesy, pretty obvious metaphor for going through tough times, we know for a fact that people who face adversity alone, people who go through tough times by themselves or without the support of others around them, have just really, really bad outcomes. And this is, potentially the most integral of the 4S's to creating resilience, is just having the sense of community, a sense of belonging to something bigger than oneself, a sense of a place that you are safe or can retreat to, a sense that there's someone somewhere out there that cares about you who you can lean on during tough times. And so the idea of standing alongside is, I suppose, actively engaging with people during tough times and leaning on them, but also, and I guess particularly for us as guys as well, ensuring that before those tough times you've actually invested the effort and attention and energy and resources into creating relationships where you know that you can be safe during tough times. I think it's really easy for us as guys to, sort of muddle along and sort of suspect that we can go it solo and get through all fine when the times are good. And then it's only when things go wrong and it's during the tough times that we find actually we did need people who we could rely on, people who we could lean on. And often by that point it's a bit too late.
Yeah, I suppose vulnerability comes into that as well, having that ability to let your walls down and ask for help from other people. Yeah, absolutely. Which is it's actually not as easy as what a lot of people think it is. No, it's funny, and there's a lot of conversation about that as well. It's very, speak up and talk up and that, but I don't know, I honestly feel like I'm
very unqualified to speak on that point in particular, because I'm terrible at it. I'm horrendous at sort of not verbalizing or communicating my emotions, and I'm very, very good at sort of masking them and sort of pretending that things are great and things are fine when they are not necessarily. So I'm trying to work on that, which is probably why I'm sort of boldly oversharing this with you right now.
Yeah.
But I think that, it's really important that when we talk about the importance of leaning on people, that, there just has to be some sort of, it's just about being realistic with life. I think I've come to realise, there's a lot of conversation about, speak out and speak up and so on and so forth. I think that there's sort of these really grandiose concepts around it. But at the end of the day, it's just as simple as giving an honest appraisal of how the day has gone, not just, and this is probably what I've been guilty of previously as well, not just focusing on the positives. I'm a really optimistic person. I'm very, very good at sort of picking out the good and I guess that's the idea of salvaging, even finding good within the bad, but probably to the detriment of acknowledging or being aware of the fact that things are sometimes bad, and that's still fine. That's okay. You just have to be realistic about how everything is going, I guess.
Oh yeah. I think I read this somewhere. You were doing like a school book thing for the book, The Comeback Code, and someone introduced you to the phrase toxic positivity?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I was once accused of that by a student at a school, and it was really interesting. I'd never really heard the phrase. This was probably 2 years ago that this happened, I'd say, and we do anonymous. Well, I do anonymous sort of feedback surveys with students after I speak at schools a lot of the time. First of all, no fear like giving 15-year-old boys the ability to anonymously write feedback and comments to you. Like, if you want to get a really honest appraisal of who you are as a person and how they perceive you, then yeah, anonymous comments from teenage boys is a pretty direct way to cut to the quick, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's a generation that's grown up with the internet. There's no fear of trolling with that demographic.
No, so I think they probably even had practice, some of them as well. So yeah, no, they that's something which I do because I think it's valuable to understand for me what students connect with, what they don't, what resonates, what doesn't, what I could do better and what I could do with. So I do it because of that. And by and large, the feedback is generous and kind from students. But yeah, anyway, one day this phrase toxic positivity came up, and I sort of had to go away and sort of figure out what that was with a bit of Googling. And I guess maybe what it meant to me was that I had incorrectly communicated what I was saying. And I guess I've hopefully done a better job of it now. For me, this idea of, resilience more broadly, but even I guess this idea of salvaging and taking the good away from the bad and the gratitude side of things, like I say, is not about just being willfully, deliberately ignorant of the fact that there is bad and there is tough times. It's instead, I guess, the ability to actually face those head to head, to kind of grapple with them and to still look to come out the other side with as much of a positive mindset and attitude as possible. But I'm not, I don't think, in denial about the fact that, there's bad in life and that's not a bad thing in itself.
Yeah, I'm torn about it, I'm torn about the phrase toxic positivity. Like a previous podcast guest I've had on, Aisha Scott. She's on a reality TV show on Bravo called Below Deck. Yeah. And she gets accused of it on an international scale all the time. And I'm thinking, is it a bad way to live your life? You know what I mean? Looking for the... Yeah, looking for the good in everything, in every situation. I don't know.
I think, and as with everything in life, I suppose that there's a bit of a range or a spectrum, and there's probably levels and ways in which it is healthy and levels which it's not. And for me, I am mindful of the fact that I've potentially previously used that kind of positivity and gratitude to sort of mask things that I was aware of or feeling, and that's probably when it's not particularly healthy or the right thing to do. But I guess by and large, I think going into life with an optimistic attitude is going to be a good way to approach and face things. Yeah,
as someone that has tried both optimism and pessimism, I feel like optimism has got me a lot further in life than what pessimism.
It's a hell of a lot more fun as well, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. All right. Hey, so the book's great, The Comeback Code. So yeah, everyone can grab a copy of that. Now, can we go back to where it all began?
Yeah, 100%.
The YouTube fame.
Yes. Yep.
So if anyone's watching this podcast thinking, I know that face from somewhere, that's because you went. This is probably in the early days of the phrase going viral. Like you went viral in towards the end of 2015.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So how many times has that clip been viewed? Over 50 million?
Yeah, so on YouTube, it's, the original video's got a couple of million views on it, I think, but through ways that people have resliced it for socials, and pages like Goldcast and things have reposted it. It's well into the tens of millions, over sort of 50 million now across a really wide range of different kind of audiences, which is very surreal, I think, is the only way to put that. That's for sure. It doesn't kind of mean anything to me. I've, particularly during that time of the cancer and during my treatment, I was just so incredibly grateful for the support, and I felt incredibly supported, I guess, by the public at a broad level, and that meant a massive amount to me. But in terms of the the virality of it, or the reach and how many people have seen it, I don't get anything from those numbers. It doesn't give me a boost. It doesn't sort of give me a kick in terms of ego or self-esteem or anything. It's just genuinely odd and surreal. Very, very grateful for the support, like I say, that's come from it, but the numbers in itself don't mean anything.
No, but I'm keen to unpack the whole thing and explore this a little bit, because I'm assuming it changed the trajectory of your life. And 10 years on, spoiler alert, you're fit and healthy.
Yeah, I am. Yep.
You've now got a couple of books out, and I'm not sure how your life would have looked otherwise.
Yeah, and I guess neither am I. And that's sort of the funny thing about it. I knew what it was potentially going to look like. I was looking to go and go to the University of Auckland here and do commerce and law. I was sort of locked into that pathway. I had a spot in the halls, and I don't know, life would have at least begun down that trajectory. Presumably I would have been happy. Generally, as humans, we find a way to be. I wouldn't have known any different, which I guess is a big part of it as well. But yeah, the experience of the cancer and everything which came about as a result of that has definitely shifted and changed the trajectory which I've found myself on now. Yeah.
Yeah. So October 29, 2015, you got this cancer diagnosis, and the speech that we're talking about that went viral, that was on November 4.
Yes.
So like a week later to the day, and day 3 of your chemotherapy.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Yeah. What are your recollections of that?
The speech itself, specifically, I guess I was so incredibly sick at that time. It was later described by one of my doctors as sort of this phase where, when you're beginning treatment, you're kind of simultaneously still dying from the cancer and having all of the side effects of the chemotherapy at the same time. There's sort of a bit of a war going on within you, and no one's got the upper hand yet. And so you're sort of getting a bit of a double whammy in terms of that. So it was a really, really difficult phase of my treatment. I was really sick. And when it comes to the speech itself, it's funny, I don't recall a great deal of it. I was on a lot of really strong medication at the time. I was, as I say, just profoundly unwell. I have recollections of some specific parts. I remember being wheeled into the auditorium. I remember sort of going through and delivering the speech, and I remember looking up at the stage lights, and I couldn't see anything. It was just all sort of stage lighting. Anyone that spent any time on a stage before knows what it's like when you can't see an audience beyond the lighting. So I remember that. I remember that my ears were sort of blocked because I was so unwell. If you're very, very sick, or if you've got a really bad head cold and you sort of sound like you're underwater, you can't hear yourself. So I sort of couldn't see. I couldn't hear myself talking, and I just was pretty focused on trying to get through the next kind of 15 minutes. And in all honesty, there's one other distinct recollection which I have, was how much I was just focused on not throwing up down my front, because I'd been very sick even in the minutes leading up to going on stage. I'd sort of been throwing up in the car on the way there. I'd been throwing up in the wings on side of stage, and Mum had said you have to take your sick bucket out on stage with you when you deliver the speech in case you throw up. And I was like, Mum, there's no way in which I'm taking a sick bucket out on stage to deliver the speech. And so I hadn't. But it was definitely in the back of my head that mums are always right, and I did not want to come out on the wrong side of this particular choice that I'd made. So yeah, there was a focus on just getting through the next sort of 15 minutes of the speech, not throwing up down my front, and wanting to get it done. Really.
When was the last time you saw it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Do you play a part of it in keynote speeches?
I don't. No, I don't. It's funny you mention that. I don't know. I guess for me. Yeah, it's funny because I guess the speech is how people met me, right? This is sort of how people, and to some degree, still remember me, and I guess will continue to remember me. But for me, it really was just that moment in time. I don't think, it was, obviously the circumstances were unique, but I don't think that there was anything particularly, I guess, remarkable about me in that speech. There definitely wasn't anything particularly remarkable about my story. It's a very common story, and that's not humility. I guess for me, it's just something which it is what it is, and it was what it was. But yeah, I haven't seen it for. Oh man, I don't know, 6 years probably.
Wow.
Would have been the last time I watched it. I sort of, I hear little snippets of it sometimes when people play it sort of as background to an interview or whatever, as a lead-in.
Right.
But it's not something which I go back and watch. And I don't know, maybe I should and have a look and see how I feel about it and think about it with a bit of hindsight and a bit of time to shift perspectives on it. But no, it's definitely not it's not regular viewing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The 50 million views wasn't me on repeat.
Well, a couple of them were me the other day. I had, like you, I hadn't seen it in years, but I rewatched it, knowing that you were coming in today. And there's parts of it where I don't know, you look scared, you look afraid. Were you?
No, I wasn't. And I guess the reason for that, I was profoundly uncomfortable. And that was sort of a lot of what my experience with the cancer and going through the treatment was that it was physically challenging. It was physically incredibly challenging. But in terms of the psychology and the emotion behind it and what I was going through, there wasn't a huge amount to it, and I guess so the answer and the reason for that is that I never had any doubt that I was going to survive and to live, but I really need to quickly put a proviso on that, which is that was not some sort of relentless positivity or optimism or bravery or courage or anything particularly admirable. It was literally just being a naive, foolish 18-year-old guy. Like, we're not particularly renowned for being aware of our own mortality at the best of times, let alone when you're in your teenage years. And for me, I honestly think, and I guess I've come to better understand in recent years in terms of brain development and growth as well, that I was pretty much physically incapable of comprehending my own mortality in that setting. So for me, no, there was never any fear around it, because there was never any sense for me that there was another alternative option other than to beat it. I was never going to die in my head. And I guess it was only in latter years, as I had the privilege of walking alongside a lot of other young people who went through that same journey and walked that same path as I did, who then went on to have, I guess, a different ending to their story than I had, that I probably became fully cognizant of and grateful for the fact that I had survived it. For me, that was always a foregone conclusion, and that, like I say, is just a reflection of obliviousness and naivety and stupidity. And there's a whole bunch of stories which I think really reflect that. There was one time where I'd had some symptoms come up, and basically I had to have a brain scan, and the two options were either one, the symptoms were fine and unrelated, or two, it was because the cancer had spread to my brain, and if it had done so, then it was probably sort of lights out, right? So it was a very tense time for evidently those around me, but not for me, because I knew, in very big inverted commas, that can't have been what had happened, because I knew I was going to be fine, right? And the brain scan results came back, and we were told as a family that, lo and behold, my brain scan was clear and it was all fine. And Mum bursts into tears, and Mum's bawling. And I vividly remember turning to her and trying to comprehend at that moment. And I just said to her, you really thought that there was a chance that I might have died? Which sounds absurd, right? But for me, it was just so foreign, the fact that someone could not perceive it, I guess, the same way that I did, which I think was probably even more foreign for the people around me to perceive the fact that I didn't think that I could or would ever die from it. There was another story which I guess is really humorous in retrospect, but kind of about a week or two into treatment, we had to have a sort of like a family conference with the doctors and the medical professionals, because they were worried I was not sort of, I had not got the message. I'd been talking to the nurses about, this is great that it's happened at this time of year, because it means that I'll have these couple of months of treatment, then I'll come out the other side and I'll be good to go for university at the start of next year.
2016, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly. And lo and behold, that triggered some sort of family conference, because I didn't get it, wasn't taking it seriously enough sort of thing. The doctors were like, you don't understand what's going on, right? Which I did. But I guess, like I say, I was just a teenage guy and was oblivious to it. So anyway, the reason that we go through all of that rigmarole is because I guess that's the answer to your question. How did I feel, or was I scared, afraid? And the answer is no, because I didn't carry any of the emotional burden from that. I was an 18-year-old guy. I didn't have, a wife and kids to worry about. I didn't have a job to hold down. I didn't have a mortgage to pay. My life was really simple at that time, and so I feel very grateful for the fact that I didn't have to carry the burden of worrying about all of these other, I guess, pressures and influences, which for other people going through that experience at a different stage of life would be a really big part of that. So no, for me it wasn't emotionally or psychologically too challenging going through that.
Yeah, the speech itself, it seemed particularly poignant given the health state at the time. Did you have a different speech written before you got sick?
So the speech was very much the same. No, I didn't really write another speech. There was a few things which were tweaked or adjusted, sort of anything in the speech where I referred to, I guess, the diagnosis and the news that I'd had in the prior week. That was obviously added later on. But apart from that, the speech was in its complete and in its entirety before the diagnosis.
Wow. So the line, none of us get out of life alive. Be brave, be gallant. Yeah, because it seemed that's the part. That's the bit where you get goosebumps because you're like, fuck, this kid is staring death in the face. And he's doing it with such courage. Oh, it was already pre-written.
that was. And I guess at the end of the day, I mean, like I say, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the speech was a high school end of year speech, and I guess a lot of the weight and the symbolism that came to it came from the situation and the context and the cancer itself. And I like I say, I don't want to give the impression that I'm not, incredibly humbled by the way that it was received. But for me, I guess it was just, my high school end of year speech that I'd written, and that was, made very different by the context, like I say. But yeah, I appreciate that people found meaning within those words, and I guess meaning within that context as well, and value from that.
Oh, and they still do. Why was it so important for you to be there? Were your parents trying to talk you out of it, or the hospital staff trying to talk you out of it?
So from a medical perspective, there was no reason that I couldn't or shouldn't be there. People around me were very supportive of, obviously, whatever I wanted to do either way. No one's going to go tell the guy with cancer that he has to go and give a speech at his school, right? But they were very supportive of me doing that if that's what I wanted to do. Why did I go and give it? I think, and it's a silly answer really. At the end of the day, I think probably what a lot of it came down to was the fact that I didn't think realistically that I should have been chosen for that role as head boy. I think there was probably other people who were better qualified, or would have been a better fit for that role, and I guess that probably had led me over the course of the year to feel really invested in doing that job to the absolute best of my abilities. I thought, since it is me, I'm going to give it a really decent shot, a really good crack, a really good nudge. And that wasn't a conscious or deliberate factor which sort of played into me giving that speech at the end of the year. I didn't think, I've kind of got to go and do this now because of that. But I guess subconsciously I'd gone through the course of that year really wanting to do that job to the best of my abilities. And I was quite worried about how I did that job. As an 18-year-old guy, it was a massive privilege, and it meant a lot to me. And I think I do recall there is a line in that speech about that, where it's sort of maybe some of that vulnerability or insecurity about that role that I'd had sort of shows through. I think I said something like, "I hope I did you proud" when I talked to the senior leadership team and who had chosen me for that role. So I think in terms of why I went and did that speech, I basically just felt that I wanted to finish the year as strong as I'd started. I felt like I owed it to those young guys that I'd had the privilege of leading over the course of that year.
And how did it end up online?
There was a whole series of sort of flukes which led to all of this happening. One of them was the fact that it was filmed at all, and the only reason that it was filmed was because I was sick. The school had set up a live stream of the school, the end of year assembly, so that if I was stuck in hospital, I could watch the prize giving live stream from hospital, which, even as I say it now, is hilarious, because the idea that you'd be sick in hospital, going through cancer treatment, and wanted to watch your high school prize giving is just preposterous. Like, I mean, they're bad enough to sit through at the best of times, let alone when you're dying from cancer, right? So the reason it was filmed was in case I wasn't there, and it ended up being filmed, with me there. And I don't even know if I should kind of really entirely tell this story. I don't think that I've shared this story publicly before, but the way that it ended up, I guess, in the media was because there had been some stuff which had gone on, basically a game of sort of tackle bull rush, which had gone on at school on the last day of school, the day that I gave that speech, the 4th of November, and some students had been sort of injured as a result of that, and the reporter had come to the school to interview the headmaster and to write about what had gone on there. And long story short, I suspect, I don't know this for a fact, but my suspicion is that my story and speech may have been thrown as a dummy pass to try and lead someone away from an unfortunate story about students being injured in a game of bull rush to write something a little bit different. But yeah, it started from there, and it began as a very, very small piece on page 5 or 6 of the press in the days following, and yeah, it just sort of continued to grow and expand from there.
Yeah, and it sure did. Hey, like went truly international. And yeah, what are your memories of going viral? Like, were you too sick to know about it or care?
Yeah,
or were you refreshing and reading comments?
I knew about it very much. I think, for me, the prevailing memory of that experience was being in the hospital with my girlfriend and just sort of hanging out, and she was, on her phone scrolling through Facebook, and I remember her turning to me and saying, "Holy shit, there's a story here in the Australian news. It's been posted on Facebook by 9 News, and it has 5,000 likes on it." And it was like, that is unbelievable. And then by that night, the TVNZ story on Facebook had like 50,000 likes on it, and it had just blown up and exploded over the course of really sort of 48 to 72 hours. And I guess that's kind of what virality is about in terms of, clips going viral like that. It's a very, very quick rise and a very, very steep descent. I guess in my case, I was really fortunate that people sort of had this prolonged care or interest for me, which was really humbling. People saw the clip and I guess it meant something to them. But more than that, they sort of continued to care for my health and want the best for me afterwards, which was, so incredibly, so it's just genuinely humbling to think that, people care about you in that way. Like I say, my story was not sort of special or unique or uncommon particularly. Everyone goes through adversity, everyone goes through hardship and suffering. For me, in that place, surrounded by other people walking that same journey as me, to feel like I had the support of, really, without being melodramatic, to feel like I had the support of the nation behind me was it's an incredible privilege. But I was very mindful at the time that it was not inherently fair, right? I was one of many, many people in that ward going through that experience, walking that journey, who did not have that same level of care and support and love being poured out for them. And I think for me, I was really mindful of that and have continued to be mindful of how lucky I was since then. So in terms of what it was like and how it felt, in a funny sense, for me, the cancer and that going viral thing is it's sort of inextricably tied together, right? Like, my perception of a cancer diagnosis is that in the days following it, you just end up plastered all over the media, and there's a million interview requests come in, and that's sort of the your life.
Interview requests,
yeah,
really,
100%, absolutely. Really? Interview requests, and it was not just interview requests. It was things like journalists calling through to the ward, pretending to be family members to try and get put through to my room to speak to me on the phone and lying about who they were, or people trying to get into the hospital ward. And I listened to your podcast. No, I actually listened to the podcast recently. I know it's not a recent podcast, but with Kelsey Waghorn, who is a friend of mine now and someone who I've come across recently in life through some involvement with an organisation that we're both part of. And she sort of, it's a story which she told in the podcast in terms of I guess how there can be some sort of pretty odd people out there, as well as the love and support and care which I had. There was a lot of people who were doing weird things, trying to get into my room. There were people,
like fans, stalkers.
Yeah, I suppose. Sort of somewhere between the two, or maybe a bit of both.
I suppose that's the problem when you go viral and people know exactly where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
You know where to find them.
Yeah, there's one ward where I could have been being treated in Christchurch, and that was where I was. So, yeah, there was some interesting experiences which came about as part of that. But for me, that was kind of the normal. Like, there is and it sounds stupid, but there's just so much upheaval and change in your life through that whole process. Your life gets tipped upside down, that all of this other stuff which came with it wasn't wasn't particularly odd, I suppose. It was just another thing's changed. I now have cancer. I now have to fight for my life. I now, I'm not going to school. I'm now, ripped away and I'm put in hospital and I'm in this environment for the indefinite, for the foreseeable future for an indefinite amount of time. Plus now I'm just on the news when I turn the TV on at night, and plus there's people who are in some cases getting into my room, and people trying to get into my room, and media trying to reach me and my family and all of this stuff. So I guess it wasn't just that was weird in itself. The whole thing was weird, and because of that it was just all quite normal and how weird everything was.
Yeah, and you were 18, so you were like legally an adult at the time, but you're still very much a child. You're just finishing your school year. I can't imagine how troubling that was for your parents, that extra additional layer, like the media trying to call it. That's wildly inappropriate.
It was a funny one.
Actually, I better think carefully because I was on the edge at the time. We probably tried to get you on as well.
I tell you what, you didn't. You guys, and I remember this as well. You guys, I think it's a family friend of ours was in touch with you guys, and you guys offered to put together some sort of support campaign and to do something really, really kind and wonderful around that. And we declined it, and you guys were incredibly respectful around that at the time. So no, you might not remember, but I do remember, and you guys were actually brilliant specifically. What was the question there, sir? I completely lost my train of thought.
Have you had a chat with your parents about just... So they're dealing with, you're cool with it. You knew you were sick and you were going to beat it like a flu, a seasonal flu. But for your parents, they thought their kid was dying. Then there's this additional layer of this sideshow going on. Have you unpacked that with them?
Probably not particularly. It's funny. Sometimes when I speak at schools, you get students that ask the question, what was this like for your parents? And I always say to them, that is such an emotionally intelligent question to ask, because for me, not only did I not comprehend what my parents' emotions might have been at the time, I didn't even comprehend the fact that my parents had any emotions of any form at all. To me, they were just, parents. They were you don't even, well, at least I didn't, as an 18-year-old guy, sort of perceive them in all of their humanity, and I wasn't really aware of what it would have been like for them going through it. So I think with, the benefit of hindsight, I look back on it now, and I just say, basically, holy shit, for my parents, this was the worst thing they had ever had to go through in their entire life. It was the hardest thing they'd ever had to be through or to get through. And yet at the same time, they were expected to not show any form of weakness. They were expected to be strong and to be there for me and to prop me up during the hardest time of their life, instead of just, retreating and wanting to curl up into a ball and cry, as I assume that they did. My parents were incredibly brave and resilient and strong, and were just an amazing source of support throughout that time as well. And I'm obviously hugely grateful to them for that.
Yeah. Well, you even banned your mum from crying in front of you.
Okay. Look, that's,
Is this on the documentary or?
Yeah, I don't know.
I read or heard this.
I've let this story slip some point. It's a story which I've been...
Poor mum.
I've been increasingly sort of reticent to put it out publicly because it paints me in a really bad light, basically.
You're 18. You're 18 at the time. Give yourself a free pass.
That's sort of, and that was the context. After I was diagnosed, we were told separately. My parents were told outside the room. I guess I was technically an adult, so I was told by myself. They were told with my permission outside the room. And so there was this moment where I see my entire family for the first time after they have found out and I have found out that I've got this stage 4 cancer. And so they walk back in and mum's crying, as you'd probably expect. But as an 18-year-old guy, I think as any human being, one of the worst things that you can experience in the entire world is seeing a parent cry. It is just an abomination of nature. That's not how it's supposed to be, right? And so, whilst it was incredibly understandable, Mum comes back in crying, and it's lived on in family lore, because unfortunately the first thing I said to Mum after my cancer diagnosis was, "Mum, if you're going to cry, you're going to have to get the fuck out," which is just appalling. It's just terrible. But Mum sort of startled and then sniffed a few times and kind of wiped her eyes and said, "Okay." And to her immense credit, she held it together throughout the rest of that time afterwards. I'm probably going to sort of make that one up to her a little bit. But at the end of the day, it went a long way to, I guess, I just didn't have the capacity to deal with other people's emotions on top of everything which was going on at that time.
When you're that age, your life sort of revolves around yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
You've got to give yourself a free pass. Yeah,
sure.
We'll get more into that soon, but I just a couple more on the YouTube clip. And 2015 quote of the year. Do you remember who you were up against? John Key was one, with talking about ponytails.
Yeah, was that 2015? Yeah, that was probably about the right time. Yeah, that could have been it. I was up against Steve Hansen, I remember, which I think the quote was, in reply to, do you have anything else up your sleeve, at the 2015 Rugby World Cup, was just my arms, I think was the quote. There was... there was a few others which it's quite funny to look back on the quotes. Actually, I have seen that somewhere recently, and it's like opening a time capsule. Like it's really funny because they relate very much to a very specific time and culture in life. It really is, and it's a really good snapshot. So I can't remember that was off my head, but there was. Yeah, there were definitely, I don't know, there's some great quotes amongst them, that's for sure.
Can you remember yours, the winning quote?
Yeah, the quote was, none of us get out of life alive, so be gallant, be great, be gracious, and be grateful for the opportunities that you have.
It's a great quote.
Yeah. I think...
Yeah, where did that come from? This is pre-Chat GPT, so there's no plagiarism here.
No, there was no plagiarism there. I guess
it's a deep quote for an 18-year-old.
I don't know. I just wanted.
You wrote it when you were 17, actually.
Yeah, it would have been right. Yeah, 17 and 18. I don't know. I just wanted to get my high school end of year speech done. I just wanted to, I guess, write something which would hopefully. I guess, yeah. So, and it's funny because I guess, like I say, the cancer and the context added and changed a lot around that. But I guess at its core, I just wanted to write something which would connect with those boys that I had the opportunity to lead and hopefully inspire them to some degree. So, yeah, the speech itself was just a collection of thoughts which I hoped that they would be able to carry forward into life with them. And yeah, that quote was that.
Because in this chat, you've almost been trying to paint a picture of yourself as someone that's like naive and self-centered and self-absorbed, but that quote and those words, they tell a different story, I think. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, sure. I guess as a young person, there's a lot of complexity to all of us at that time and stage of life, and I suppose I am. Pretty kind of self-deprecating, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think I like the fact that as Kiwis we are good at just being down to earth and realistic about these things. But I guess the reason that I lean into that is because I'm mindful of the fact that sometimes people perceive, my story and my experience as being so, inspirational or so powerful or impactful. And for me, I don't want it to be framed that way for no reason other than the fact that I think that for people it makes it feel, unachievable or unattainable, particularly when it comes to resilience. People say to me, you're so brave to get through the cancer, you're so brave going through that. And it's kind of like, well, no, it was not bravery, it was not courage, it was not some sort of superhuman ability, it was just what we all have. Which is the ability to kind of muddle through, fight through to another day and just to try and keep on going. If there's anything special or unique or uncommon about my story, it's the fact that I've been supported by and surrounded by some incredible people along the way, which has been, a massive part of how I've got through those tough times, and that I've been really, really lucky. I've been so lucky to be born in a country where I had access to treatment and to healthcare. So lucky to have been diagnosed when I was. So lucky to have, got through that time of life. So lucky to have been supported by people through that, as I say. And then you're really so lucky to have had opportunities come about as a result of that as well. I'm hesitant to frame myself as being sort of special in any kind of way, because I think it comes down to amazing people that I've walked alongside and a lot of luck that I've had throughout that time as well.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think how I felt at the time. So the clip came and it went viral, and I think we were all just wrapped up in the story. And it's it just sort of provided a beacon of hope, I think, to have a positive outcome.
Yeah,
to show that some people have a terrible outcome, with cancer, but not everybody does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in a sense, that's something which I've been mindful of as well, and have wanted to try and, I suppose, portray through my cancer experience and journey at the time, was the fact that you can go through the cancer, you can go through that treatment, and you can come back out the other side not just as good as you were beforehand, but in my case I think I'm sort of fitter and healthier than I've ever been before. And I think that there is something powerful or important in that for people who have walked that path, or people who will walk that path in the future, to understand that.
Yes, that 2015 quote, none of us get out of life alive, so be gallant, be great, be gracious, and be grateful for the opportunities you have. Then 364 days later, you're back again. in the same stage, same assembly hall, this time cancer-free. This quote was not quote of the year. It wasn't even a finalist, I don't think. Don't drink diesels and don't get cancer.
Don't tell me it's not good advice, though, right? That's bringing things back to basics.
Again, that's a snapshot of the time. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, what are diesels?
Diesels are RTDs. They're premix bourbon and Coke, and they're, I don't know, 7 or 8 percenters.
Can you still get them?
I think you can. I know, and I only know because we had a reunion night a few years ago where it was compulsory to drink diesels, which sort of. I don't know. Definitely made me wonder how we ever managed to drink them when we were 18. That's for sure. But yeah, I'll tell you what, that is pretty solid advice by and large. As I've said to people before, I think I've had as many. I've felt as bad off the diesels as I've felt on the chemo. So they're not.
It's not a great endorsement.
No, it's not. There's not going to be any sort of brand partnership coming my way from that, I don't think. But
there's two trains of thought. Some might say that diesel has the capability to kill cancer. Others will tell you it causes cancer.
It's pretty. It could be both. It could be either. But it's strong stuff. It's strong enough to potentially do either of them, I think. That's for sure.
And then so the viral clip that was the haka at the end that you got from your classmates in your school. Was that on the clip or was that a separate?
That was on the clip. Yeah, right. That was at the end of it there.
Fuck, that's powerful, isn't it?
Oh, it was honestly, still to this day, probably the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. It was incredibly powerful and meant so much to me. It was so incredibly, I guess humbling. I sort of sigh when I say that because I think I use humbling as a bit of a crutch word. Like I've been told before that I repeat that far too many times in interviews, but there's not really any other way to describe what that experience was like with the cancer and getting through the other side, apart from and the experience of the haka, other than humbling.
I think it's a fine word to overuse. If you're a person that practices gratitude and looks for that sort of stuff, I think you would find it humbling.
Yeah, it was, and it was powerful, and I felt the full force of that support. So, yeah.
Because that's the part of the clip where it looks like you're on the cusp of tears. You're fighting the tears. Yeah, that was just like a powerful emotional moment. It wasn't for your own fear of what you were being wheeled off into.
No. It was just. I felt. I just really felt the full weight of that support in that moment. And it was incredibly overwhelming. It was very, very powerful. And I did go back and watch that clip of the haka a number of times when I was back in hospital and going through the treatment and felt the full weight of that support. And it did help me get through some of those tough times, those tough moments,
Is it okay for you to talk about this stuff now, or do you feel like a completely different person? Given 10 years has passed, is it like triggering to revisit the cancer stuff?
No. So, for me, it's always quite funny because when I talk about cancer, and I sort of inadvertently have ended up spending a lot of time doing that, I recognise very quickly that, for a lot of people, it's a difficult, uncomfortable, awkward topic to discuss. You bring up cancer and it's just inherently shocking and uncomfortable and confronting and awkward, and it's really hard for people to talk about. And I guess that's because we've all had experiences with cancer, right? I mean, almost everyone knows someone that has been through it, who's close to them. Almost everyone's lost someone close to them.
One in three's the stat. One in three's the stat that they use for Daffodil Day each year. That it impacts 1 in 3 Kiwis.
100%. And I guess that's first hand. I guess the second hand and the connections which we have to people who go through and walk that journey is almost all of us experience that. So I completely get and understand and accept why there is that discomfort around talking about cancer, why people don't feel good or feel comfortable talking about it. I guess for me, it's a funny one because for me, it's not, shocking or confronting or awkward or uncomfortable or weird to talk about. For me, cancer's been part of, my journey or story or life or whatever kind of cliche you want to put to it. And so because of that, it doesn't feel any of those negative things. There's a story which I tell, which I think illustrates how people feel about talking about the cancer. And as a few years back, I went into a cafe to order a coffee, went up to the counter, and the barista at the counter said to me, "Oh, have you been in a scrap? Like, have you been in a fight?" And the reason that she said that was I've got a mark under my right eye. It's only in sort of certain lighting. If you get in the right kind of lighting, though, it looks like I've basically copped a shine. I've got a black eye. It looks like it's sort of darkened up and swollen up around there. I'm not sure if it'll come through in the clip or not. You've got such good studio lighting that I suspect it potentially won't. But anyway, you get in the right sort of lighting, it looks like I've got a black eye. It's not from that at all. It's actually from where, when I went through the cancer, there was a tumour. When it grew and grew fast, it sort of damaged the underlying bone structure through there, and when it shrunk away during the treatment, it basically left this dent or this divot, which if you get in the right light and cast a shadow, the shadow looks like a dark mark, and so on and so forth. But I wasn't going to tell the barista that because it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and it would be fucking weird to bring that up with a complete stranger, right? So I just sort of shrugged it off and said, oh, no, it's not, no, it wasn't that. No fighting for me. And she goes, oh, yep, cool, rightio. Did you fall down the stairs? And I was like, no, it wasn't that either.
It's a really inquisitive barista.
I think she was having a slow morning or something, because she then goes, right, okay, did you walk into a door? I said, no, it wasn't that either. But the problem was, like, as I'm feeling more and more awkward about this, she's getting more and more excited. She's sort of building up into this guessing game instead of it petering out.
She's in too deep.
Yeah, she's loving it. She's like, oh, you play rugby? I was like, nah. And she sort of throws a few more things out there, and I'm always watching her sort of like steam the milk, thinking like, fuck, I can probably ride this out if she just gets this coffee done quick enough. Until eventually she sort of sealed both of our fates when she went, well, I'm not going to give you your coffee until I can figure out how you've done that to yourself. And I thought, well, it's going to be a seriously long morning, and a long morning with no coffee if I kind of let her guess her way to that ride. So I blurted out, and like I say, to me, it means nothing. It means nothing to say it. There's no emotional attachment to it. There's no emotional response. It doesn't mean anything to me to say it. But I just said, it's from where I had cancer a couple of years ago. But to her, I think, her reaction was basically the epitome of how I think people feel about talking about cancer. She physically recoiled in horror. Her mouth literally dropped open in shock. She would not stop apologising. Got the coffee for free in the end off her, actually, which I think...
You've been using that excuse ever since.
I haven't paid for a coffee in nearly 10 years now. Right? Just always angling for freebies from baristas. No, I think for me, that sort of illustrates this discomfort which people have around talking about cancer. And like I say, I completely get and understand and accept why that is. But for me, to answer your question, no. I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me to talk about it, because it's just how it's been. It's just the reality. It's just the truth. And yeah, I just feel lucky to still be out the other side of it and to have the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah. So it was September 25th. Oh, by the way, who was Jake Bailey pre-cancer? Like, what was the biggest adversity you went through before that? Parents breaking up?
Yeah, I guess I'd been through that sort of normal, regular kind of young person adversity. I mean, I'd lost a grandparent, or I'd lost two grandparents. But I'd lost my grandmother, who I was particularly close to in the year prior to the diagnosis. But that's, normal adversity. I'd lost, my parents had split up and separated when I was 7. So that's, again, pretty normal, regular kind of young person adversity. I don't think I was, necessarily a particularly resilient person before the cancer. I don't even think I'm really a particularly resilient person after the cancer either. But I guess I was just a pretty regular, average sort of teenage guy. I wasn't good at sports. I did better in the academic side of things. I didn't do a lot outside of school. I wasn't sort of musically talented or into culture or arts, or, like I say, sport was never a strength. So I was just a pretty regular kind of teenage guy hanging out with his mates and his family, and just getting through school and figuring out what he wanted to do with his future.
It was fabulous hair at the time. You look like you could have been a sixth member of One Direction.
That's quite funny. It's funny when I watch that clip. When I watch that clip back of the speech, the times I have seen it, whenever I see a still from it, it always really bugs me that my hair looks like that, because it's all greasy and disgusting and horrible. And I guess part of me, it's selfishly part of me, regrets that, because the reason it is that I had stopped washing it because I was worried it was going to fall out before the speech. If I had washed it, I had it in my head that now I started the chemotherapy and I was going to lose my hair, that maybe I'd get in the shower, wash it, and it would all come out. And so the reason it looks like that in the video is just that it hadn't been washed for days. Like I said, I was very unwell anyway, so I wasn't having a lot of sort of showers particularly. But yeah,
and I suppose it was the last thing on your mind. You're not looking in the mirror in the car going, yeah,
no,
still
no,
good.
I wasn't. No, I think I was laying in the back seat of the car throwing up. So it was kind of where it was at now. Where it was at then. But yeah, I started to notice it more because as you'll see, I don't have a great deal of hair on my head now. So I look back on the clip from 10 years ago and think, man, what a lucky guy I was back then. And I think I took that for granted a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, so it was September 2015 when you started getting sick. There was some pain in your jaw.
Yep.
You thought it was wisdom teeth related.
Yes, yep.
So that starts you on the health system treadmill. Yeah, what happened? You just get progressively sicker and sicker? Was it a gradual thing?
It was over the course of probably two to 3 months.
Why did it take so long to discover it?
I guess the easy answer is that there was always kind of a logical explanation along the way. And, wisdom teeth, sore wisdom teeth in an 18-year-old is not going to raise any alarm bells, right? Wisdom teeth hurt. Wisdom teeth get impacted. They get infected. They cause difficulty. When my wisdom teeth did that, that was completely normal. And then, I guess gradually stranger and stranger things started to happen. I lost a lot of weight very quickly. I lost about 12 or 13 kgs over the course of about 2.5 weeks. But again, there was kind of a reason for that. I couldn't chew any solid food. So at the time I was living entirely off vanilla Up and Go. I was having 3 litres of Up and Go a day, sort of a 1 litre bottle for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And vanilla Up and Go, great stuff. Still have it, but not exactly what you'd call complete nutrition, right? So it wasn't particularly surprising when I lost that weight. Then I guess the bottom half of my face went numb was the next thing which happened. Which is, alarming to just, lose feeling in the bottom half of your face and for it to not come back. But again, there was sort of a reason. The wisdom teeth, an infection in there or anything like that can compress the nerves which supply sensation to the face. So there was sort of another logical explanation. And then, progressively I just got, I guess, sicker and sicker until eventually I was kind of bedbound and started throwing up blood. And, in these intervening periods, I should make it clear as well that there was a lot of engagement with the medical system too. I was seeing a number of doctors, a number of maxillofacial surgeons, a number of dentists. I'd been to A&E a couple of times. But effectively, there was just always a relatively logical explanation and when it comes to the presentation of these symptoms, you don't jump straight to the idea of getting this. The cause is some extraordinarily rare and uncommon form of cancer, right? You go with the most obvious solution because 99% of the time that's correct. It's just in my case it wasn't.
Yeah, again, back to your parents, that must have been a particularly troubling time for them.
Yeah,
right?
It was.
Did they manage to shield you from how worried they were, or was it quite clear to you just how concerned they were about losing 10 kilos in 2 weeks or whatever? That's not great.
No, it's not. It's not great at all. Particularly given that I'm not, I'm not a huge guy, as you will have noticed. I'm sort of 5'7", and I probably weighed then about what I weigh now, maybe 60, 65 sort of kgs. So losing 10 plus kgs rapidly was not, was not normal or expected. For my parents, I guess they did do a good job of, I suppose, shielding me away from kind of their emotions and feelings around it at the time. I think for them they were abundantly worried, but we were doing everything which we could in terms of engaging with the medical system and professionals, and they were really good at in practical terms at helping with that and pushing those things along and advocating for me within the healthcare system. But that's just how it was.
Can you remember the moment you got the news?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I do. It was a regular kind of afternoon. I was laying in my hospital bed, in my hospital room there. I'd had a whole range of different sort of tests and procedures in the days preceding this. And I guess I knew at that point that something was really wrong. I didn't know what it was. I didn't really expect that it would be cancer either, but I did know that it was going to be bad, whatever it was, just based on sort of what the doctors had been like and based on how sick I was. And so a lady who I'd never met before came into the room and she sat down on the bed beside me and she introduced herself as a hematologist. I had no idea what a hematologist was, but she went on to explain just very slowly, very calmly that I had cancer, that I had Burkitt's, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and explained that at that stage they'd found it through my brain lining, eye sockets, nasal passages, sinuses, gums, jaw, spinal fluid, pancreas, and through both of my kidneys. And yeah, she sort of talked me through what the options were in terms of treatment, which was, when I say options, it was sort of the option to have treatment or not, which I guess is a theoretical choice more than anything else. For me, I was always set on having that treatment because, in my head, there was no alternative other than getting through it. You actually framed it really well before when you said, you think of it like, you sort of said you viewed it as having a flu or getting through a cold, and really that's kind of what it was in my head. It was like every other time I'd been sick previously, I'd gone to the doctors, I'd been given some medication, and I'd come out the other side completely fine. And I guess for me, I perceived the chemotherapy and the treatment in a very similar sort of way. It was just a matter of just doing what the doctor said, going through that process and coming out the other side.
Because if you didn't get treatment, the other option, like how long did they?
About 2 weeks, sort of.
You were a very sick young man.
Yeah, and the cancer, it's it's the fastest growing cancer which exists. It's evidently very, very rapidly growing, and so sort of a 2 to 3 weeks was the doctor's best estimate at kind of about how long I'd still be kicking if it wasn't for immediate treatment.
Was your mum in the room? Is that the moment that she bawled her eyes out?
No, so mum actually came back in after that. So I was just in there with the hematologist at the time.
Do you start crying, or are you just sort of, is the room spinning?
No, there was there was just nothing. There was really, and I think it's worth sort of thinking of it in the sense that it's incredibly hard to explain, as you can probably tell by the way I'm struggling to frame it. I think in that moment I felt genuinely nothing, which sounds like a bit of a platitude or a cliche, but you've got to think, in life, you're always feeling something. Even if you're just feeling, I don't know, contented or calm or relaxed or whatever, there's always some sort of feeling there. Even if it is a very neutral one, there is always something there. In that moment, I genuinely, for the first time, and it's only happened once since then, I felt absolutely nothing in that moment. It was completely blank, and it's maybe some of your listeners will have experienced that themselves. Maybe you've experienced that at some moment in life, but if you haven't, I think it's incredibly hard to understand or imagine what it must be like to feel blank like that. Just absolutely nothing. And then as we talked through the treatment with the doctor, I probably felt a little bit of a sense of maybe impatience. I just wanted to get started on things. I really knew that the only way to get through the cancer was to go through the treatment. I wanted to come out the other side. I wanted to get back to my life again. And so there was a sense of, let's just get on and get started with this. Let's get through this. And so that was maybe the first emotion I felt afterwards. But no, at the time there was no, it didn't feel like the world was crashing in. It didn't feel like, it didn't feel like this big sort of movie moment. There was no big emotions attached to it. It wasn't the things you'd expect. It wasn't angry, scared, sad, afraid, upset. It was nothing. Just very much nothing.
Yeah, maybe that's because you were so unwell potentially.
Yeah.
You're just pleased to finally get an answer.
There was definitely a bit of that as well. Yeah, there was definitely a sense that, particularly after months of getting increasingly sicker without any answer or solution to it, there was definitely a sense of relief that we had kind of got some sort of answer. And it wasn't a great answer, obviously, but it gave us something to work with, whereas up until that moment I'd been getting worse and worse without any idea why or what we could or were going to do about it.
I know what your answer would be to this, but is your mum or your dad salty that it took so long to find the answer?
Yeah, look, it's funny. So I got no hard feelings about anything which happened, because for me, it didn't change the outcome. First of all, if it had changed the outcome, it would have been different. Two, it was there was never any individual failings. There were some times where the system sort of could have performed better, and there were times where I could have and perhaps should have been diagnosed earlier, but I genuinely have no hard feelings around that. These things happen. That's just the reality. You can't have a healthcare system which gets everything right all the time, because it's run by people, and people don't get everything right all of the time. It's just the inherent nature of these things, right? So I don't have any hard feelings around it. I don't, my parents and family may have slightly different perspectives and feelings around that. But for me, I've spoken to people involved through that process, and it's been a learning opportunity for a lot of people that's come about as a result of that. I'm just grateful that it's gone on to have some sort of positive impact in terms of how things are done now, so that hopefully next time it doesn't have, it can save someone from falling through some of those same cracks.
So is this the point where your mum goes to a bark with the Pegasus arms and gets 2 double shots of vodka?
Yeah, this is. And mum hates when this story comes up, which is so funny.
Hi, Mum.
Sorry about that one, Mum. Because it paints, it's just like, I can't believe she ever let this story slip, because it just paints her in a light which is so much not who she is as well, which is what's so funny about it. Mum is very, very she's fun, she's great, but she's very, she's not a big drinker, one. In fact, she's spent most of her life sort of not really drinking at all, and she's not really much of a drinker now either. But she's very responsible. She's very level-headed. She's very, I guess, mature is a funny word to use to describe an adult anyway, but she's a very normal, upstanding citizen, and somehow to a ongoing perpetual detriment let slip the fact that that one of the ways that she responded to that in the immediate aftermath was with a few drinks, to try and take the edge off, so that and as she says when she told this story, it's so that she could go back and sort of put her emotions aside and be there to support me. And in fairness, I just told her that if she was going to cry, she had to get the fuck out, so she was working to find an alternative solution to mean that she could kind of be there, and I guess taking the edge off things a bit was what it was in that moment. Sorry, Mum.
Because you did a documentary, and your mum told the story firsthand, and when I saw that, I thought, oh yeah. It paints a picture of the type of character she is.
Yeah.
But then you read the first book that you put out called What Cancer Taught Me, and there's these wonderful parts peppered through the book of your mum's sort of, I guess you'd call it a diary or letters to you.
Yes, it is. Yeah, she wrote me a letter every day when I was going through treatment, and it was about what had gone, in practical terms, it was about what had gone on in the treatment and how I was doing. But more than that, it was just a really broad, capturing of that time and the emotions and thoughts around it as well. It was really, really powerful. Yeah,
they're like love letters to you, really, in a way.
They are. They are. They're a mum's sort of care and affection for a son going through this time, and it a lot of stuff shines through, and it's really powerful. Yeah,
and you read them, and you think, part of it, she's writing it for you, for something that, because you're not able to fully remember what's going through, so you'll have an account of it. And then part of it, on the flip side of that, is a diary for herself in case it's a negative outcome as well. Yeah, it's multi-layered, and it's it's definitely like a lot deeper than a lady that just does a bit of daydream.
It's funny, because the drinking story paints a real vivid picture of Mum, and it paints like complete opposite of who she is. Like, it really, it's not like I'm just leaping to Mum's defense here, but it really is. I find it quite amusing that the picture it paints could not be more diametrically opposed to who she is as a person. So yes.
So during this time, is there a point where you can remember the worst physical pain you experienced?
Yeah, there was lots of different. It's quite funny. I often get asked that by particularly students. Students are kind of like, what was the most gruesome or gory or painful thing that happened? And I'm like, cool, like I'm on the same page. Like, these are some of the best stories. So I used to talk a lot more about some of these, medical procedures and things. I knocked that on the head at the end of 2023, because I figured, I kept tally over the course of 2023, I'd had 14 audience members pass out when I told them about some of these medical procedures which I'd had. Which at some point,
well, you think that'd be quite a grisly sort of bunch?
Yeah, 100%. And it's quite funny. It's always, I sort of told some of the same sort of stories and talked through the same sort of things with with my with adult audiences, I guess you'd say, as well, with companies and businesses and organisations and teams that I was working with. But it's always the teenage boys that pass out. The girls are way tougher, way stronger. The men seem to get through it all right, and the women are fantastic. It's teenage boys just drop like flies. And I did have one presentation to a group of sort of year 9 and 10 boys, so kind of those 14, 15-year-olds, and they were like, tell us the gruesome, gory stories, And then 4 people passed out in one presentation. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. It's a health and safety hazard at some point. Like it just becomes wrong to stand up on stage and tell these stories when you know there's a decent chance that someone's going to flake. So,
all right, let's do it one last time, though. But for anyone that's driving a car right now, maybe just pull over.
Deep breaths. And as I used to tell the students, if you think you're going to pass out, put your head between your knees. Probably not while you're driving, might not be great. But I don't know, some of the things which stand out were something called a bone marrow aspirate, which is where they take a sample of your bone marrow. It's obviously inside your bones. And the way they do it is through your pelvis. If you touch the back of your lower back, where it meets your pelvis, the one on each side, left and right, you've got these bumps or lumps. Fancy name is an iliac crest. It's sort of the back side of your pelvis. That's where they go in through. And basically they take sort of like the easiest way to describe it is it's basically like a receipt spike. You know how like at cafes and restaurants where they spike receipts, it's basically one of those. And the doctor, whilst you're awake for all of this, basically hammers this big metal spike through the skin, through that thin layer of flesh, punches a hole through inside the bone, and then sort of digs around on the inside of your bone and takes a sample of the bone marrow. But this process of hammering the spike through, in my case, I was young, I had pretty robust, strong bones, and I remember being in this hospital bed with the doctor hammering the spike through and sort of being thrown around in the gurney, like flailing around because of the force that the doctor had to use to hammer the spike through my pelvis. And it was, you're awake for all of this. It was horrific. And I remember crying. I cried like a baby. I cried and cried and cried. And then, other things, intrathecals or sort of spinal taps. I had chemotherapy put into my spinal column. And more people have experienced those than the bone marrow aspirates, but that was horrific. That was really bad as well. And I was having those weekly during treatment as part of my treatment protocol. So you'd get through one and you still knew that you had another one coming and another one coming after that. And that was quite bad. The needle would punch into your spinal column and there would be a distinct pop as it went into your spinal column, and then the needle would hit the nerves which run through your spine towards your legs. So you'd get shooting pains through your legs when the needles hit different parts, and you get sort of electric shocks shooting down your legs, and it was pretty horrendous. And I guess even, in terms of the pain strictly, there was, the cancer itself, the diagnosis with the cancer in my jaw, or pre-diagnosis, was remarkably painful. And there was even a period where I started to get these horrendous pains in my legs, the bones in my legs, which felt sort of inexplicably at the time as if my legs were, sort of breaking. And came to find out in retrospect that, with my cancer, it's, blood cancer, so it's produced inside the bones and the bone marrow. Because it's so fast growing, though, the cancer cells can't get out of the bones fast enough. And so, like if you shake a bottle of fizzy drink and the pressure builds up inside, that's basically what had happened to my leg bones. And the pain, this incredible pain, was basically the legs breaking and sort of developing these microfractures from the pressure building up inside them. There was a fair few, painful bits and gory stories and stuff along the way. But at the end of the day, it was not, like I say, particularly unique or remarkable, and often I sort of found myself looking around and feeling kind of grateful for the situation that I was in relative to other patients. There was a guy in the room next door to me at one point who had a brain tumour, and the way they were treating it is they drilled a hole through his skull and put a port in, and they were basically putting chemotherapy through a hole in his head onto his brain every day. And I was thinking, well, if he can get through that, and he's just as human as I am, then presumably I can get through this as well.
Why can't they give you like a local or a general for the receipt spike? Sorry, I'm fixated on the receipt spike thing. It's a great visual, by the way.
Yeah,
terrible visual, but a great one.
So you get a local for that, but the way that it was described to me, and definitely the way that it felt, was that you can sort of numb up the skin and the flesh around there, but particularly when you're young, your bones have nerve endings which grow on the outside of the bones, and you can't numb those up. So you don't feel it go through the skin, but you do feel it go through the bone. And it was, she was pretty rough.
It's a great endorsement for Up and Go, though, eh? This guy's got bone density like we haven't seen before.
This guy's off the charts. This guy has been drinking 3 litres a day for the past month or something.
This is like, we're never going to get through these bones.
It's calcium content through the roof.
So, so all up, your cancer journey was like, it's very brief, eh? Very brief. So it was like towards the end of 2015 that you get sick, and then by January 29 you're in remission.
Yeah. So it was 3 months of treatment, and I feel incredibly lucky for that, eh? Like I met and knew and was close to other young people through that time who had very, very long roads ahead of them for them and their family to travel. You know, you'd meet 6-year-olds that had 4 years worth of chemotherapy ahead of them, and you just think that, you know, that is just, to use the phrase again, that really is just an abomination of nature. It's just so wrong. It's just so wrong to see young people who have to walk this path and their families that have to walk this path with them. And for me, you know, 3 months of treatment, you can do anything for 3 months, right? It was short, it was sharp, it was either going to work or it wasn't. And I'm just lucky that in my case it worked. And after that I was out the other side, and my body began to heal and recover and repair, and my health is now better than it's ever been before, which is, I'm lucky to be able to say that in itself. I know lots of other young people and other survivors who have not recovered to the same level or standard that they were at beforehand, who have been left with permanent side effects as a result of the treatment. And whilst I had some of those for a period of time, and for the long term, I'm now, you know, fitter and healthier and better than I've ever been before physically. So
January, that announcement on January 29, was that a special day for you, or for you was it just like, yep, good, this is what I expected?
Yeah.
Like for your parents, like I imagine it was a huge moment of elation.
Yeah, I think when you say the 29th, you mean being announced in remission the first time?
Yeah, so that news, yeah.
I said before that I sort of, you know, felt that nothingness when I was diagnosed, and I've only felt it one time ever since then. That was the second time. When I was told that I was in remission, when I was told that the cancer was gone, I once again felt the exact same thing that I'd felt when I was diagnosed, which was nothing, absolutely nothing, a complete nothing, and not any of the things you'd expect. I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like a weight had been lifted. I guess even as an 18-year-old guy, I didn't feel that on behalf of my parents even. I didn't sort of perceive how powerful or impactful it was for them, because for me, I was probably still very much in the space of, I knew I was going to get through this. I can't believe you guys ever doubted that there was a possibility that anything else could kind of happen. And so, yeah, I mean, my memories of that time, like I say, are just being pretty neutral, pretty kind of blank. And I was very aware of how lucky I was to have made it to that point, but probably the full weight of the emotion hadn't come through or sunk in at that point.
What's your relationship like, or what's your thoughts on manifestation? Because it sort of worked out the way you sort of visualized.
Yeah, 100%. It's a funny one, eh? Because I think that at the end of the day, I suspect that there would be or is some sort of proof or evidence out there, whether it's anecdotal or not, that people's attitude as they go through, I guess, any form of adversity or suffering goes towards achieving an outcome, right? And I suppose that theoretically anyway, cancer's probably no different to that. But the reason I'm quite cautious around that is because if you make this case that, yeah, you know, I got through the cancer because of this manifestation, or because I was so, you know, positive or optimistic, or because I expected to, you then end up creating this false negative where you suggest that anyone who doesn't survive or doesn't make it through, or who isn't as lucky as I have been, sort of had some sort of role in causing or creating that outcome for themselves, which just isn't true. So whilst I guess, I guess there's maybe a case to be made. It's entirely unknowable, but I guess there's a case to be made that perhaps my expectation that I would get through, you know, came to or went towards achieving that outcome. But I certainly don't think that we can, you know, always jump to those conclusions, because otherwise you end up creating this, you know, the inverse as a false narrative.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, people like to say things like, she kicked cancer's ass or whatever, but it's kind of saying that anyone that doesn't kick cancer's ass wasn't enough of a fighter or didn't try hard enough or do something. Definitely. But I think there's a lot of like genetic luck and other things that sort of come into it.
100%. And I think, I guess the language around that's probably shifted a lot in recent years as well. I think people are sort of more hesitant to frame things as, fighting, being a fighter or fighting cancer or, beating cancer, or like you say, kicking cancer's ass and coming out the other side. Because I suppose there is a risk that it creates this inverse as well, which isn't true. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the term survivor's guilt?
Yeah.
Did you have any of that at the time, or have you had any since then, or were you just in the woods such a brief time you didn't get to form connections?
I tell you what, I don't think I've ever experienced any survivor's guilt, but I've carried and continue to carry a whole lot of, like a shitload of survivor's gratitude, I suppose I'd call it. For me, you turn up into the hospital, right, and in my case, I was treated in what's called the BMTU, which is, this ward for adult patients. As an 18-year-old, I was in there. But I spent a lot of time in another ward called CHOC, which is the Children's Haematology and Oncology Centre. And that's, that's kids with cancer, right? And you turn up into this hospital, you're diagnosed with cancer at age 18, and I expected that when I got to that place and I looked around, I would be surrounded by people who looked like my grandparents, right? I thought it would be an old people's sort of setup. Or if people were particularly unlucky, really unlucky, I thought maybe there'd be some people my parents' age there. And I turned up in this ward, CHOC, and spent time in there, and you look around and you are surrounded by people who look a hell of a lot like yourself, people, my age at the time, people considerably younger than me. I don't know whether I was naive or oblivious or a bit stupid, but I genuinely never comprehended until that moment that I saw it with my own eyes that each and every day, just up the road from where I'd been living, going to school, going out to town, there were dozens and dozens of other young people with goals and dreams and hopes and ambitions and whatever, just as real and vivid as mine, who through no fault of their own were robbed of that opportunity to go out and to chase those goals and hopes and dreams. And for me, I know that I was incredibly lucky to make it out of that place, to walk out of there. There's a lot of people who I was close to, a lot of people who I knew who didn't have that same privilege, who didn't get to move forward and move on in life. And so for me, I feel a sense of responsibility to live my life to the fullest on their behalf. And I think people can sort of comprehend that and understand that. If the roles had have been reversed, realistically, that's all I ever could have asked of anyone else, is that if I didn't get to walk out of there and they did, that they just went and gave it a decent fucking shot on my behalf, right? And so I carry that on my shoulders. But more than that, I don't think that that's a responsibility which I just bear alone, because I can't really figure out why it would be. Like, is it my job because I was lucky, or is it my job because I met these people, or is it my job because I saw this place? No, I really think that collectively we, as society, and particularly young people that I speak to as well now, have an obligation to just go and live life to the absolute max, the absolute fullest on behalf of those people that don't get the opportunity to do so. And I hope that doesn't come across as sort of patronizing or sanctimonious, but for me, I only feel this way because I know how lucky I have been. I've seen that place. I've met some of those people who weren't quite as lucky, and whilst there's not survivor's guilt, there's a hell of a lot of survivor's gratitude for the fact that I can still now go out and do all of these things which I get to do, and I think that really spurs me on every day.
No, I love that. I think you've got a second chance and you're not squandering it. And it would be easy, because your thing seems so, your whole process seems so streamlined and seamless, in and out, a couple of months later, done. It would be easy to, especially with the passage of time, sort of lose the appreciation for it or take it for granted. But it's clear that you're not.
I think that's got to be a conscious sort of choice and decision. And in all honesty, it has faded in part. I don't think it'll ever go away. It'll always be an integral part of who I am and how I view life and how I feel in the world. But I had a really powerful chat with a guy a number of years ago now when I spoke at an event at a conference, and afterwards he came up to me and he said, hey, I went through cancer when I was the same age as when you went through it, and I just wanted to let you know that all of those things that you think and feel now, all of those positive changes, all of the gratitude, the perspective, all of these good things which have come about as a result of the cancer, they do fade with time. You have to consciously, deliberately try to cling on to these things and hold on to them, because they will lessen and deplete and sort of shrivel up a little bit as you get further and further away from that experience and time of life. So for me, I guess I try and cling on to the good and the positive change which has come about through that and as a result of that. Yeah.
And what about your mental health? It seems like it was rock solid through this time. Has it been good since then?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, like I say, I've been, I've probably been at times, as we touched on earlier, too good at just focusing on the good. And I guess maybe that's sort of like the flip side of that ramble that I just went on there about, living life with a sense that, every single day is always going to be better than the alternative that I had, right? When you almost die and you continue moving forward, you've sort of got to go into every day kind of grateful for how things go, regardless of how good or how shit they are. And I think previously I've probably been not good enough at actually stopping and processing and thinking and feeling emotions, because I just go, well, fuck, I guess it's better than having died, which in some ways is a really powerful, motivator and sense of gratitude, and in other ways is just a really profoundly unhealthy way to view and think about mental health and how bad things just happen sometimes in life. So, my mental health has been good, but I've still got, as we all do, a long way to go and a lot to learn, and probably need to do better in terms of how I engage with myself around mental health, I think.
Oh, spoiler alert, mate, it never ends. It's an ongoing treadmill. I'm 52. I'm still trying to get better, still learning. But I think that's an exciting thing about life. That there's never a peak that you reach. Yeah. There's always another peak.
And I guess that is the excitement, like you say.
Yeah.
But I guess as well, in a sense, that's kind of why I'm so passionate about this resilience side of things, is that's quite empowering. The knowledge that, you sort of never, there's always another challenge to come. There's always some other shit that's going to happen. There's always some other problem which is coming your way. But if you have the capability to try and sort of steel yourself and learn and prepare and develop and hone these skills of resilience, that hopefully you'll be in a better place when those come. And if not, at the very least, you can at least go into them as the opportunity to learn and treat adversity as a bit of a training ground instead of as a victim. I think that's one of the things which is most empowering about learning about resilience, and I guess my hope with this book, and in terms of equipping people with some skills around resilience, is that when things go wrong, you can actually face it from the perspective of, this is a training ground, a learning opportunity. This is something which I can become better from, as opposed to just, oh God, I've ended up in this shitty situation that I don't want to be in. This sucks, and there's nothing good which can possibly come from this. It allows you to meet adversity as a survivor rather than a victim.
Yeah, I love the path you're on, and resilience. The more awareness about it, and the more that people can learn that it's something that can be trained rather than you're born with or you're not. I think the better. And hypotheticals are a little bit they're silly. They're kind of pointless. But how would life potentially look now had it not been for the cancer?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know.
It's dumb. It's a dumb question.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, it's an interesting thing to ponder, and it's something which I've definitely found myself pondering more recently as well. I think, like I say, I would have been up here. I would have studied in commerce and law. I think I probably would have gone down the law pathway. Life would have been life. Life would have been presumably good and happy and whatever. But, for me, in all honesty, I feel like I'm moving to a stage and phase of life where I'm potentially looking towards moving into something different anyway. For me, I've had an amazing 10 years traveling and speaking to, over 100,000 people around the world, having written a couple of these books. And in a lot of ways, I feel like, whilst I'm really grateful for those opportunities, I very much enjoy that work, I feel like I'm maybe moving towards the next stage and phase of life. I don't want to be stuck with this teen cancer survivor thing forever. No one wants to be defined by something which they did when they were 18. For better or worse, no one wants to be remembered for something which they did when they were in high school, right? And as I say, I'm so grateful for the support and care and everything which has come about, all of the opportunities which have come about as a result. But I feel like I'm ready to move out into the world and to do something different and to be something else and hopefully to become something more. And I don't know what that opportunity will be yet. if you find it, let me know. If anyone listening knows about it, be sure to get in touch. I'd love to hear about it. But I think, I'm moving into a stage of life where I'm ready for the next journey, the next adventure, and I'm excited for that.
Oh, you're playing dumb. You've got ideas. I bet there's a note section on your phone with you must have like a sort of idea of what you want to move into next.
Yeah, I can definitely see myself doing a few different things, and I can definitely see places and ways in which I can hopefully add value, and particularly add value given the opportunities and lessons and learnings which I've taken over the past couple of years. I don't think that I don't feel stuck in this stage or space of life where I'm at now. But it's time for me to go out and to prove myself that I can do something different and be something more.
Yeah, well, you're a guy right now that loves type 2 fun.
Yes.
You showed me a photo before we came in of you and I side by side in the Kepler Challenge last December, which is a 60k mountain run. So you love like putting yourselves in deliberate situations where it's going to be tough.
Absolutely,
it's going to be challenging.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, why is that? Do you think that would have been there without the cancer?
No, it wouldn't have.
Right.
It definitely wouldn't have been.
Right.
For me, endurance sport has been a really big part of the last sort of 5 or 6 years for me, from sort of ultra running and multi-sport in terms of the coast to coast and endurance cycling. That all came about because, in all honesty, like I say, I sucked at sport when I was at school. I was like the kid that got chosen last for the team in PE, and when you got picked for the team, the whole team would groan that you were on their team. Like, really, this is again not humility. This is just reality. I was the kid that swam width instead of lengths at school swimming sports day. Which I said that to someone recently, and they said, like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I mean, literally, I had to swim the widths across the pool instead of the lengths because I couldn't get from one end of the pool to the other. So they made me do across the pool instead. And like I say, I'm not talented in sport. And then I remember getting to the end of year 10 at school. I vividly remember my last ever PE class that I had, and I wasn't taking PE as a subject the following year. And I remember getting to the end of that class and going to the locker rooms and getting changed and thinking to myself, that is the last time I will ever exercise again in the rest of my life, because no one will ever make me go for a run or exercise ever again. And I suck at it and I don't want to do it anymore, so I'm not going to ever have to do it again. This is great. And then, I guess, so first of all, going through the cancer showed me a couple of things. One, that my body had a hell of a lot more to give than I expected it to. There were times when, during treatment, I was so incredibly sick that I did not think it could get any worse or I could endure any more, and I always could. And the second thing was that I realized that my brain was a really big part to unlocking that. Like, I came to see the impact that, that my inner thoughts and that my head had in terms of controlling my body. And because of that, I guess I fell into this world of endurance sport, because it's the only thing I've ever found since then where you can put yourself in a situation where you think you've got nothing more to give, and it somehow turns out that you do, and two, that the key to unlocking that is within your head. So got into the ultra running side of things, and I've done a fair bit of that over the past couple of years. But as I say to kids at school when I go speak at schools, like, I was the kid that sucked at sport. If you are the kid that sucks at sport, that gets picked last for the PE team, then endurance sport is the sport for you, because you don't actually have to be good at anything. I still suck at running. It's just that I can run for 10 hours straight. You don't have to be good at it. You just have to be able to do it for a really long time. And I still suck, but I can sort of outlast other people. So endurance sport is the sport for you if you're stuck at sport.
I'm laughing along with you because I see parallels. I was the same with sport. So team sport, I felt like I was always so uncoordinated and so useless. I'm letting other people down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Whereas if you're running, it's like
a worse feeling as well. I mean, like, that's especially when you're teenagers and you're mean to each other, right? Like, you let other people down. You know about it. You get told about it pretty quickly. And the running side of things, being individual is it gives that. But in many ways, there's more to it for me. Being out in nature, the isolation, the trail running side of things is really important for me in terms of my mental health and just as a person. It means a lot to me to be in the nature. And I think, broadly speaking, I guess the thing is, when it comes to learning and developing resilience, when it comes to being good at getting through tough times, you have to go through adversity and hardship. Like I said, you don't learn to be resilient without going through adversity. And for me, I manufacture or create some of that adversity in my life by, signing up to go run a 60k mountain race, because I know it'll be hard, but I know that when I get through it, I will be stronger as a result of that, and I'll get to apply all of these lessons and learnings around resilience along the way, and it will hopefully make me a better person on the other side of it.
Yeah, 100%. And psychologically, it just gives you this data that when things get tough in life, the unforced adversity, you know that you can handle it because you've got this. You've got this previous data that says you can.
Yeah, and that's how we build resilience in life. That's what we know about resilience, is that it's created around something called self-efficacy, which is basically your ability to back yourself, your self-belief, your sense that you can get through something. And over the course of a lifetime, that's how we become resilient as adults. We start off as young people, getting through a school swimming sports day where you have to swim widths instead of lengths of the pool, or getting through being picked on in PE class because you suck, like I did. And it gives you the sense of, I got through this, so I can get through that. Yeah. And that builds up over the course of a lifetime until the other end. You're saying, like I said, I can get through this divorce because I've got through this redundancy, or I can get through this redundancy because I've got through the loss of a loved one. And that is how we create resilience over the course of a lifetime, is by taking on increasingly bigger and bigger challenges. That's something which you can choose to do. You can find that within you in a voluntary context by endurance sport in my case. For other people, it's learning a language, or learning an instrument, or going through a breakup, or moving overseas. There's lots of ways that people find this within themselves.
Jeez, I love that. I've got a couple more about resilience, then we'll let you go. Jesus, but shit. We've been going like an hour 40.
I tell you what, I'm a bit of a listener to your podcast as well, like I said, so I know for a fact, and nearly an hour 40 is that's on the long end of things. I'm quite happy with that.
Oh no, it's good though. It's been an intriguing chat, and I can't thank you enough for being so open.
No, it's a real privilege. Oh, there you go. I've done it again. It's a real privilege to have the opportunity to be here. Yeah,
you pick yourself up when you say these things, but I only started getting into practicing gratitude and journaling a few years ago, and it's actually I find it a great way to live your life, to be appreciative of these things.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't think it's a negative at all.
Look, and it's something which I talk about a lot in the book. I think at the end of the day, kind of in life, we've sort of got the option to capture all of the small good stuff, all of the little wins, all of the tiny bits of good throughout the day, or the option to kind of ignore them. But I think that if you don't capture those, if you don't deliberately seek them out and try and look for them and find them, then I think that it has an overall negative impact on you over the course of your lifetime. There's so much good to be found in each and every day. And like I said, I'm still very keen to try and temper this, like I say, with an understanding of the fact that not everything has to be good. Not everything always has to be positive. You can feel bad and feel down and feel upset sometimes. It doesn't have to be good through and through. But I think that if you can find and seek out and look for the good within each day, overall, you end up with a better experience of life as a result of it.
Yeah, if you lose the ability to appreciate the good little things in life, like a crazy red sunrise, or the first sip of a really cold glass of water first thing in the morning, life's just going to be way more difficult. Yeah, I
think there's no point in not capturing those things, and I think that it puts you in the right mind frame to get through tough times as well. It's the second is that idea of salvaging that. The gratitude is a good thing to practice, not just during tough times, but just always. It's a good habit to be in.
What are some practical strategies you found most effective in bouncing back from setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the 4 S's is really at the core of everything which we know about making people good at getting through tough times. I mean, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek to say that. No one could really assume to create something quite so comprehensive, but that book and the 4S model is a relatively good summary of 40 years worth of research into the psychology of resilience and what makes people good at bouncing back and getting through. I think, for me, individually, the things which I find most powerful are probably, people and connections and relationships. I'm a big kind of, people person, and find a lot of benefit and strength in leaning on people and being around people. But equally, all of those other 3 S's are kind of relevant and applicable. I think that these are things which we know for a fact make people good at getting through tough times. And I would assume that for your listeners, as we went through those 4 S's, hopefully they kind of all rang a bell. I'd probably be a bit worried, actually, if anyone found them particularly revolutionary, because if they do ring a bell, if it's something which you say, hey, that's how I got through X, Y, or Z, that's something which I do during tough times, probably means you're a relatively resilient, well-adjusted adult. It probably means that you're just good at getting through tough times.
I honestly think it's something that a lot of people just don't even give any thought to.
And in a lot of ways, you don't have to. Like I say, those 4S's, for you, for anyone, they're probably relatively familiar. They probably do ring a bell. They probably are things which you've utilised at different times. I think what is really worth keeping in mind is two things. One, if any of those ring a bell, if any of those are things which you do, it's because you have learned and earned those through blood, sweat and tears. Like you weren't born with those. They weren't innate within you when you came out of the womb. Those things, those skills, if you do them, if you've got them, it's because you had to earn them when you went through suffering, right? And particularly for our young people, we actually have the capacity to equip them with these skills before they have to go and figure it out for themselves. We can send them out into the world, I guess, a bit armed to go out and to deal with things better, so that they can just have a head start. They can meet adversity as I say, a training ground with some skills and tools on their side, instead of having to sort of bumble through and figure it out. And I think for many of us, that's why adolescence and growing up is so hard. It's because you start facing real world adult problems without the real world adult skills to deal with them, because you haven't learnt them yet. That's really what that time of life is just figuring these things out. So, my work with schools, I've been really passionate about equipping young people with those. But secondly, for adults, for the rest of us, as we move past that phase of, adolescence and into life, I think it's really important to put words to those things which we don't think about, sort of frame up and understand why these skills that many of us will have, why they actually work, what the research is, what we can do to lean into them further, and how we can sort of integrate them into our lives more. And I think, for me with the Comeback Code, with this book, I think the thing which has been most, I guess, exciting about it is that it was written really with a teen audience in mind, or at least for young people. And a lot of the feedback and reviews that I've received over the past couple of weeks that it's been out has been people of all different ages and stages of life saying how beneficial and helpful it was to them. I think my favourite review so far was from someone who said, I'm sort of 3 times the age of the author. I'm 27. You can do some quick maths on that.
Wow.
And he said, for me, this has taught me so much and given me so much. And I thought, wow, that's very, very humbling to hear. So, yeah, I think it's important to put words to these things and to remember that for our young people, they're not born with them innately. None of us were, none of us are, but we still hopefully can learn them and better understand them.
And how cool is that someone in their 80s is reading your book and still trying to get better or 100%. Improve?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's so exciting.
It is.
What advice would you give someone who feels like they can't see a way forward?
I think the main thing which, and we sort of touched on this before, because it's a situation which I think most of us have found ourselves in, right? When something bad happens, when something goes wrong, when there's something catastrophic in your life, often that first sense of emotion or feeling around it is a sense of, I've got no idea how I'm going to get through this next, day, week, month, hour. Yeah. And as I said before, hopefully the answer for you, for me, for anyone listening, has been, I'll just get through to the afternoon, or I'll just get through to a catch up with a mate, or I'll just get through this week of work, or I'll just get through this project, and to try and take it piece by piece. I think when you feel like there's no way through, when you feel that sense of overwhelm, it's incredibly important to try and strip things back down to a scale at which you don't feel overwhelmed, and to take things on your own terms, whatever size pieces those may be.
That's something I get from doing endurance runs, like the Kepler we're talking about.
100%.
It's just putting one foot in front of the other.
It is.
Taking it. Just go to the next little orange Waratah pole thing, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Or go to the next drink stop, and it's amazing. Eventually, you do that, and eventually you get to the finish.
And as you will have experienced, as I've definitely experienced, your sense of scale in terms of what you're trying to get through shifts depending on how you feel. There was sometimes in Kepler when we ran that last year together that for me I was like, oh boy, I just need to get through to that next tree, or I need to get through to the next Waratah, like you say, or whatever it may be. But and other times you go, well, I just need to get through to the next aid station, or I need to get through to the halfway mark. Some of these things are big, some of these things are small. You just have to be adaptable and reactive depending on how you're feeling, and that's applicable to kind of everything in life. God knows it's not just applicable to endurance sport and ultra running. Yeah.
By the way, very charitable of you to say we ran it together. There was a moment near the start line where we got caught, photographed side by side.
I don't think I didn't realise that you were there either. I'd seen you before. I had no idea we were next to each other, and I'm sure that you didn't know that I was next to you either. But when I saw the race photos come through afterwards, I picked it straight away and thought it was pretty entertaining.
That's cool. But just for clarification, you were finished. You may have even been showered and changed, and I was still deep in the forest.
Well, I think you've exhibited considerably more resilience than I had to, right? If I was at home in the shower and you were still running through the friggin' forest, then I think you probably did a better job of enduring it and being resilient than I did over the course of that day.
Good point. I had way more time on my feet.
That's 100%. It's a bigger day for you.
Hey, this has been great. Is there any final words? Any parting words?
No, I don't think so. It's been such a cool opportunity to chat, and I can get the sense and understand, not only from this conversation but from listening to your podcast and from having met and known you before as well, that you're someone that thinks about these challenges in life and how we can best sort of overcome them, and I know that you've exhibited great resilience at different periods through your own journey as well, and I think that's probably why we've spent nearly sort of 2 hours talking about it, is because for you, for me, hopefully for the listeners as well, we've seen and understand what a powerful and profound impact that resilience has in the course of our lifetime. We both understand that, as hopefully everyone listening does, that there is this inevitable adversity we all go through and we all face, but it's been a really cool opportunity to sort of yarn through and chat and unpick it a little bit with you here now, so thank you for the opportunity.
It's been great, mate. Jake Bailey, thank you so much.
Cheers, Dom.